Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? Okay, today we're doing interpersonal effectiveness, and we're going to talk about some tips for assertive asking. Okay, so this is kind of tied into the Dear Man skill, but we're not going to specifically go over Dear Man today. It's sort of like tips you could use during the Dear Man process or during a time when you want to assertively ask for something. Okay, so we're going to go over that. All right, so quick review on interpersonal effectiveness. So these are basically skills for improving our relationships with other people so that we can get along better, so that we could improve our ability to get our needs and wants met, and to also keep our self-respect while we're doing it, okay? So this one's more focused on getting our objectives met, but in an assertive manner. Okay, so tips for assertive asking. So what is assertiveness? Just to review that. So assertiveness in a nutshell is being calm, so managing our emotions while we're communicating, being direct about what our needs are and what we need to say, and being respectful to the other person as well as ourselves, okay, in the process. All right, so keeping those in mind, that's what assertiveness is about. So here's some tips. Tip number one is to choose the appropriate intensity of asking. So if you look at that part on the right, the picture, the second picture, it's sort of like the volume that you might see on a TV or a stereo. So imagine that, not that we're necessarily going to get louder when we ask more intensely, but that we're going to be a little more firm and a little less willing to take no for an answer, right? So in the beginning, at number one, it's sort of maybe something that isn't that important. Like we could really take it or leave it. It's not a big deal. So you may not even ask or hint. All right. But as things start to get a little more important, you might hint a little bit, kind of indirectly indicate that you want a certain thing. So such as, let's say I'm at somebody's house and I see them with a beverage and I say, "Oh, what's that you're drinking?" And he says, "Iced tea. Do you want one?" Okay. So I didn't directly ask for it, but the person can kind of get take a hint a little bit by my just even saying something about his drink. And so now he's offering to give me something. Okay. So that's just an indirect. So it's like a minor request. It's not a really big deal. But sometimes people read us really well and we don't have to say it, really straightforward. But other times we have to say it a little bit more and more straightforward. So we want to maybe, ask confidently, use more direct and confident body language when we're doing it, and kind of start resisting a no, maybe not taking a no for an answer so easily because it means something important to us. So the more important the request, the more firm we have to be and the less willing we need to be to say no. We might need to negotiate sometimes, but if it's super important, like if someone's, in medical distress and I'm saying, I really need a doctor right now, right? That's a really important request and they may not want to take no for an answer. Like if I take someone to the ER and someone's bleeding or something, we might need help right now, right? I'm going to be very intense about my asking. But if it's about an iced tea, all right, I prefer an iced tea, but if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world, okay? Sometimes where I work in a hospital, and sometimes other patients are very intrusive and people don't like that, or they touch them, or they're aggressive toward them. So they might have to be very clear and assertive about, you need to stop touching me right now. And the person may not take a hint. Like if you shrug when the person tries to touch you, they may not think anything of that. They may not even process that. You might have to literally say, you need to stop touching me and back it up right now, right? So that's a really direct and intense kind of way of expressing your needs, okay? So you have to weigh it based on the situation and who you're talking to and stuff like that. Okay, so next, if you're making a pretty big or important request, it may help to prepare. So for example, if you're asking your boss for a raise, you may want to think about in advance all the reasons why you deserve that raise. Maybe you could give them examples of good work you've done, or projects you've completed, or professional behavior you've exhibited, and you want all those things really fresh for you so that when you're meeting with the person and you're a little nervous, you're not going to be scrambling for details or caught off guard. You'll be very prepared to make your case. Okay, so always take that into consideration, especially if it's something really important. Okay, and you're doing that Dear Man process where you have to describe the situation. Okay. All right, so next, choosing the right person to ask. So important. Can this person actually help me? All right, if you have a medical problem, are you going to go to your accountant? Or if you have a tax problem, would you go to your physician? Probably not, right? Because they're not the right person to ask. So sometimes, like at work, for example, some people ask me social work questions, but I'm not a social worker, so I don't always know things about a residence or a discharge plan or something like that. So I have to redirect them to the right person to ask so they have a better chance of getting their answer, right? Like I answer the psychology questions, the therapy questions, but other people I have to answer questions related to their discipline. All right. Another thing is, do the person have the resources you need? Right? If I don't have any money on me, you could ask me as nice as you want using all the dear man in the world. But if I don't have money on me, I can't give you any money. Right? If I don't have the thing you're asking for, it doesn't matter how nicely you're asking. Okay. So make sure you're asking someone that could actually give you what you need. Um, do I help them a lot when they need me? Right? If you're always helping somebody on a regular basis and you're always there for them, it's kind of okay if you want to ask them for a favor back once in a while, right? It's only fair that there's a back and a forth in a relationship, okay? So in most cases, that's totally appropriate. And finally, can I trust this person? So let's say you have a request of a very sensitive nature. Do you know where I should buy condoms? Maybe you don't want the whole world to know about that. You want to trust the person that they'll keep to themselves, even the fact that you asked something, right? Or let's say you're saying, you know what, I've really been struggling. I think my symptoms of my mental illness are getting worse and I need a new psychiatrist. Do you have a referral? I'm sure you wouldn't want that blabbed all around necessarily, right? So you have to trust that the person will keep your request private if that's something that's important to you, and also that they'll respond in a respectful way. Be careful about asking people that in the past have maybe made you feel foolish for asking, made you feel like you're a burden or too needy, right? You want to ask somebody that'll treat you respectfully. So try to pick somebody that has a better chance of doing that. Maybe someone who has a good track record from the past. Okay, so next, also really important, try to pick a good time to ask. I don't know if there's always a right time, but a preferred time. So you got to observe the other person. If the person looks really busy, or if they're in a bad mood, or if they're talking to somebody and they're in the middle of another conversation, or they look kind of distractible, or they're running here and there and they're not sitting still, that may not be the best time to ask. So even if your request is legitimate and you have all the preparation and the person normally is respectful, if it's the wrong time, you may not be able to get your needs met. So either schedule time with that person, just ask the person if they're available now or when they can be available, and make sure that when you talk to them that they can give you their full attention. They can sit down and give you enough time to discuss the issue, and they won't rush you, and that they will give you the what you need for the discussion. The only exception to this is if it's something really urgent, right? If it's an emergency, you might really need something right now, and you might have to say, listen, I'm sorry for interrupting, but this is an emergency. I really need help with this particular thing right now. Okay, sometimes certain things can't wait, but that's probably more the exception than a rule. So if you're an emotional mind and it feels urgent to you, but it's not actually urgent, you might still have to wait. Okay, so patience in that case would be important. So this is really just a health and safety thing for urgency. Next, would help to sometimes use what they call cheerleading statements in DBT, or positive self-statements, encouraging self-statements, to kind of pump yourself up. So if you're feeling a little nervous about asking and you want a little more courage and getting yourself to be ready to ask, so try to say good things to yourself to get yourself ready. All right, so these address some of the doubts we might have, some of the insecurities, so we'll just run through these quickly. So 1, it's okay to want or need something from somebody else. I will find a way to cope if I ask, but don't get what I want or need, right? So some of our anxieties is that, well, what if I ask and they say no? It's going to just tear my whole world apart, right? So sometimes we have to, encourage ourselves to just try anyway. If they say no, you just deal with the no. You'll figure it out. And the fact that someone says no to my request doesn't mean that I shouldn't have asked in the first place. Okay, we all have a right to ask even if we get a no. Maybe it's just the wrong person or the wrong time or whatever, right? You're still allowed to try. However, if you've asked multiple times in the past that same person and got the same answer, that might be a sign that you weren't willing to take the no, or that you weren't really listening. All right, so just watch that part. If I didn't get my goals met, that doesn't mean that I didn't go about it in a skillful way. Okay, so sometimes the person just can't give you what you're asking for, right? If you skillfully ask me for some money and I don't have money, I just don't have what you were asking for. Okay, sometimes the environment's too powerful and you're asking for something that's against a rule or a policy, and the store can't do it or the business can't do it. Number 5, standing up for myself over small things can be just as important as big things are to others. Okay, so for example, I have a number of food allergies. When I go to the restaurants, I have to assertively ask to have certain things not be on the food that I'm ordering. Okay, and that may not be a big deal to someone else because maybe they don't have any food issues. They can eat whatever they want, but it's a big deal to me because if I eat food that is stuff that I'm not supposed to eat, I could get pretty sick. So it's a big deal for me to stand up for myself about that. And if they bring me stuff on my plate that shouldn't be on my plate, I need to call the waiter or waitress over and ask for another one. All right, so that's part of the assertiveness that I have to do for myself. All right, so number 6, I have a right to assert myself, even though I might inconvenience others. Okay, one of the chronic anxieties is about being a burden, is about getting people to be mad at us if we ask for something, that they won't like us if we ask for something. But sometimes we have to remind ourselves that it's okay if they are a little inconvenienced by what we're asking. And a lot of times, the people who are worried about that are the same people who are always inconvenienced themselves for others, right? So you might be one of those people that always bend over backward for people, but you're afraid to ask for yourself, right? It's okay if people, put a little effort in to help you too. Okay, so it could really go both ways. All right, so finally, these are just some sentence stems that could give you some ideas about the phrasing you could use if you're trying to be assertive. And they're very polite and respectful kind of languaging, but you have to make sure that your tone matches it, okay? So that you're staying calm, you're staying clear and direct. All right, so you could fill in the blank. You could pause the screen and think of some things that you like to ask about and practice using these phrases. All right, I'm just gonna read them to you, but I'm not gonna fill them in. But on your own, you could practice filling them in. All right, so could you please tell me, I was wondering if can you give me some information about, can you help me to, would I be allowed to, when are we going to, da, da, da. How much longer do I have to? Can you explain more about, what should I do when I would appreciate it if, could you give me directions to, right? See how nice that sounds, right? It's very polite languaging. Okay, so you could practice those to help you be assertive if you'd like. All right, so I hope these tips are useful for you. Feel free to put them into action and test them for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. All right, so thanks for listening, and I'll see you the next time. All right, bye everybody.